This game is absolute peak Pokémon. Such was my main thought upon playing Pokémon Emerald to completion, finishing most side quests. My past negative experiences with Gen 3 had not prepared me for how much I would eventually enjoy the Game Boy Advance games. Great new look, great gameplay additions, great music, and, most importantly, great world. The island region of Hoenn is a mysterious area that is thrilling to discover. But to understand what makes this place so much fun to explore, we have to go back to a time when it wasn't. The first generation of Pokémon games, Red and Blue, introduced Kanto to the world. And for many people, Kanto is Pokémon. It is surprisingly open and full of interconnected cities, meaning we always have a place to go, with progression unlocked similarly to a Metroid game. This region is so ingrained in Pokémon's identity that it has been remade several times, with the latest incarnation releasing on Nintendo's extremely popular Switch. But while the world itself is open and easy to navigate, almost every single area within that world is your typical RPG dungeon full of non-stop fighting and the occasional item. There is little space for mystery in the game, as the rare side activities, such as the Celadon Casino or the Safari Zone, are forcibly introduced to us through the main quest line. And the extra optional areas in Kanto are still basic dungeons with the bonus of a legendary Pokémon at the end, like Zapdos in the abandoned power plant or Mewtwo in Cerulean Cave. Since Gen 1 was the birth of a cultural phenomenon and one of the most successful franchises ever, lacking interesting side areas is perfectly acceptable in my book. The second generation, ushered in by Pokémon Gold and Silver, introduced numerous new features, such as the time of day, weekly events, the ability to obtain eggs, and some welcomed side content, like the bug catching contest or the Runes of Alph. Those features make the world feel more alive and adds lore, even if it mostly comes in the form of legendaries once again, with the presence of Ho-Oh, Lugia, and the legendary beasts. Areas like the Whirl Islands and Mount Silver are fun optional caves, and a great way to expand the world while making it interesting to explore. Unfortunately, all the mystery, mystique, and excitement of the world is completely kneecapped by the inclusion of Kanto. In a paradoxical move, adding an entire region actually reduces how vast the world feels. While it is satisfying to see Kanto several years after the event of the first generation, the region itself is frustrating and boring to explore. The world is not slowly opened like a Metroid game this time. Most of the region is available from the get-go, allowing the player to approach its gyms in any order. This, in turn, forced the developers to make all the trainers the same low level, which actively encourages skipping as much of the region as possible. Instead of expanding Johto, the addition of Kanto makes Gen 2's world feel more predictable, uninspired, and just an easy way to pad out playtime. With a brand new region, the third generation had the perfect opportunity to create something unique and interesting. New console, new Pokémon, new mechanics, why not a lot of new areas? After finishing the game and most of the side content, even completing a living Pokédex, I can confidently say that Emerald fulfills my dream of a world full of optional activities and interesting areas to explore. With the addition of the Sevi Islands added to the Gen 1 remakes, it was clear the name of the game was Expand the World, which is why I chose to play Emerald instead of Ruby and Sapphire. This version is stuck full of rad places and endgame content, which turned it from a cool addition to the franchise to one of my favorite Pokémon games ever. The first piece of content I would like to talk about happens near the end of the game. The story of Emerald is one of its weakest points in my opinion, as it feels schizophrenic, constantly jumping from Team Magma to Team Aqua without settling on a single antagonist, and ends with a cutscene where the main storyline abruptly resolves on its own. Fortunately, the post-Elite Four side quest, which allows us to capture Groudon and Kyogre, makes up for it. At the Weather Institute, we're told a random route is seeing abnormal weather events. This leads to a small investigation where we need to find the entrance to either Terra Cave for Groudon or Marine Cave for Kyogre. Finding these caves is a thrilling experience, and instead of just stumbling upon the legendary at a fixed location, we must play detective to find each entrance. The process feels much more rewarding, and the legendary status of each Pokémon much more logical. The quote-unquote legendary is not standing in the same spot waiting to be caught. Both creators of the land and sea are living entities that move around the world, appearing and disappearing with the weather, making our eventual capture that much more exceptional. Another area I loved is the desert on Route 111. On top of having a banger music, this desert is a new environment in Pokémon, accompanied by a unique weather effect, and we find 2 points of interest in this arid place: the Desert Ruins, home to Regirock, which we'll talk about later, and Mirage Tower. The latter is a small area where we navigate some treacherous floor with the Mach Bike, until we find 2 fossils. Once we choose one, the tower sinks into the sand, disappearing forever. Now that's a way to obtain a fossil. And it doesn't end there. Once we are Pokemon Champion, we can find the second fossil in the Desert Underpass on Route 114. Both tower and underpass are small caves whose only purpose is to deliver fossils to the player, and I absolutely love them. Mirage Tower does not appear every time we traverse the desert, adding to its mystique and excitement when it does show up. Both areas paint the world of Hoenn as being full of hidden caves and small mysterious areas waiting to be explored. Fossils did not appear in Gen 2, but came back with a vengeance in Gen 3. We are far from the simple choice in Red and Blue forced on us during the story. The Emerald implementation is rock solid, which is why it is a huge bummer that actually resurrecting said fossils is so dull. After defeating our father at the Petalburg gym, we go back to Mauville and talk to Watson, the local gym leader. He asks us to shut down the generator of New Mauville, an abandoned underground town next to the nearby lake. This area is, in essence, a second crack at the Kanto power plant idea. A building devoid of trainers and instead full of electric-type Pokémon. This Gen 3 attempt is better than Gen 1 in my opinion, as the layout is more compelling, the Voltorb traps can be avoided as they're tied to a cute puzzle, and the final reward is something different than a legendary Pokémon. Sure, the presence of Zapdos is what made the Kanto power plant exciting, but removing the legendary allows New Mauville to be accessible relatively early in the game, making electric types obtainable earlier than in previous generations. Once again, the idea of having a whole underground facility hiding in an innocuous-looking cave makes it feel like anywhere in Hoenn could be hidden other underground areas, just waiting to be discovered. The time of day, one of the main additions to Gold and Silver, was removed in Gen 3. No night, no morning. Yet the GBA still keeps track of time. This feature is used for evolutions, berries, and one special area. Located north of Moss Deep City, Shoal Cave's layout is different depending on the time of day, which changes the current tide. At high tide, we can access the higher areas, but the lower floors are submerged. At low tide, we can access those lower floors, and if we explore a bit, discover an underground ice cave. Additionally, by thoroughly searching shoal caves in both high and low tides, we can obtain 4 shoal salt and shoal shells, exchanged for the held item Shell Bell. Yet another area with several rewards, a hidden underground path, and a unique mechanic. I love it! Water is a central element to the region of Hoenn, and having a place specifically tied to it is awesome. On the theme of water, a common occurrence in real life is the presence of sunken ships on the oceanic floor. Well, Hoenn has one too. The game teases us early on, as we drive by the wreck on our way to Slateport City. Once we get surf, we are free to go back to Route 108 and discover that the ship is not abandoned at all, and is instead the local tourist attraction, which is absolutely not crazy and very safe, I'm sure. In all seriousness, the abandoned ship turns out to be a great Pokémon dungeon, with a bunch of items, fun NPCs, and, if we come back with the HM Dive, an extra area with a light puzzle allowing us to obtain the scanner, the only way to get the deep sea items required to evolve Clampearl. While the appeal here is not the mystery, unlike every other place I mentioned so far, the ship does contribute to making the world feel lived in, full of optional areas, and fits the oceanic theme of Hoenn to a T. And we now get to the biggest water side quests of Emerald. Throughout our adventure, we encounter 3 strange rock formations, spread in diverse areas across the region. These monuments are the Regi Caves. To unlock them, we need to find a tiny dive spot hidden at the end of a water labyrinth. This entrance is arguably a bit too hidden, as the game doesn't point out the secret path's existence, making it difficult to find without hints. Regardless, once we do find this underwater area, we are tasked with deciphering puzzles written in Braille. I love that idea! The Pokémon franchise is clearly targeted towards kids, and when that power is used to convince them that releasing 2 versions of the exact same game is perfectly fine, that's a problem. When that power is used to teach kids about a language necessary to blind people, which may lead to them learning about disabilities in the first place, it is simply fantastic. Why come up with a weird, unique language when reality is much more interesting? On top of that, deciphering the Braille text is not enough. We still have riddles to solve. The Regi puzzles are extremely fun to figure out, as they require some out-of-the-box thinking, and act as an extension to the puzzles present in Pokémon Crystal in the Ruins of Alph. The Regi quest encapsulates everything I enjoy in Emerald side quests: mystery, intriguing caves, world exploration, and water, with our reward being 3 new legendary Pokémon. If we want more legendary Pokémon, we can turn to the controversial Event Islands. While having this content inaccessible legitimately is a complete joke, the idea of multiple far-off areas being the home of legendary Pokémon is one with merit. Emerald has 4 of these event-only places: Southern Island, where we can obtain Latios or Latias; Naval Rock, where we find both Ho-Oh and Lugia; Birth Island, where we chase a triangle and fight Deoxys; and Faraway Island, where we play a game of hide-and-seek with Mew. It absolutely sucks that cheating is mandatory to access these areas, as they hugely impact how Hoenn feels. Sure, there is no in-game reason or story behind these islands, but their presence makes us feel that there is so much more to the region we have yet to see. Turns out, Hoenn is only the main island, and we are just scratching the surface to what is present out there. One cannot help but wonder what else could be waiting for us past the horizon. Believe it or not, there are even more areas I enjoyed exploring in my playthrough of Emerald. The surprisingly large northern side of Route 115, the labyrinthine Meteor Falls, the easily missable Route 123 with the Berry Master's house, the expanded Hoenn Safari Zone, and even the unused Altering Cave from Fire Red and Leaf Green. The most important aspect of all these areas is that they are completely optional. It is up to the player to discover and explore them. It creates a region that is always fun to come back to, because we may find something we missed the first time. A region full of surprises. The region of Hoenn. There is a notable difference between a huge world and an interesting world. Just because an expansive map looks mysterious and interesting doesn't mean it is. A concept I had to grapple with in my recent playthroughs of both Pokémon Emerald and Scarlet. The region of Paldea is very open and has a lot of areas to explore, which made it immediately interesting. I was engaged and thrilled to explore this brand new world. After multiple hours though, I came to realize it was all a facade, as the landmarks I could see in the distance led to nothing interesting upon closer inspection. The world was vast, but exploring it felt unrewarding and uninspiring, with all the notable content being found exclusively in the main story. Hoenn had the opposite effect. The beginning of Gen 3 is very much on rails, with an extremely linear story and a stupid amount of backtracking in the early hours. What makes this region unique is that half the map is in the ocean, yet there was no water exploration of any kind. But after reaching Mauville, things start to look up, and we are given more freedom to explore. And as I was exploring more and more, I realized that everywhere I looked, there was a small interesting area to find. And every time I would follow my curiosity and go off the beaten path, I would be rewarded. Hoenn had perfectly encapsulated the joy of discovery. It is why I would always fall off playing Pokémon Emerald near the beginning of the game, and why, now that I have finally played it to its conclusion, it has become, without a doubt, one of my favorite Pokémon games ever. Because it is simply a great game. Because its world is so exciting. Because Game Freak, with the region of Hoenn, nailed its world. Huge thanks to all you YouTube members and Ko-fi supporters, especially JCBTV, SCJ643, Y Lambda, Alexan, and Mini Assassin. You made possible this love letter to Emerald.